This morning, I came down. Asha was playing the Patriots, Eagles, overwhelmed with joy. I'll pray. Jesus, we really do thank you that we've had 10 years of this together, of a lot of laughter, friendships, and love for one another, and love for the things that you've called us to do.
We're down here at 7 Mile Road, Philly's 10th anniversary. Can you imagine that? A wicked shocker is how we would say that in Boston. It's not because we pushed the right buttons or ran the right playbook. It's just because some people got together and said, we will sacrifice and risk and love for the sake of the glory of Christ.
I get emotional thinking about it. The greatest joy for us has been the people that God has brought to us from day one.
On my hardest day, when I struggle to believe whether this thing is true, I think this church and these people remind me that it really is.
I remember we were driving from Boston down to Philadelphia. We're on the New Jersey Turnpike, and Shainu goes, I don't want to move. And I'm like, you couldn't have told me that maybe before we left Boston? Like, we're headed down to tell them we're ready to move.
I was in as far as 7 Mile Road, Boston, but was I in for us to church plant? That was a whole different question. In a matter of 5-6 months, God really did change my heart, and then I said, I'm in, we're in, let's do it.
I was born and raised in New York. My parents immigrated in the late 70s. We both grew up in Indian churches. The belief is that Thomas, the apostle, came to India in 52 AD, and so there's a long history of Christianity in India. The church was culture, language, customs, food, dress, all of it, just like in India. It was almost like 6 days a week I was in America, and then on the 7th day we'd go to India. You had to navigate between two cultures all the time. You don't fit in perfectly in America, but even if you go back to India, they know you're not really from there either. You're this sort of third culture. You're this other thing. You had lots of folks who grew up in the church with us and who went to church for as long as mom and dad made them. But once they hit like college, many of them stopped going. This second generation exodus from the church. And that sort of became a burden for us of who's going to reach them and who better to reach them than us.
Born and raised in Philly, and as much as I love it, I just realized there's a lot of brokenness in my city. God made me Indian and he made me Philadelphian. And so is there an opportunity now that I have to be able to reach others with this same gospel that he has reached me with?
We wanted to reach Indian Americans, but at the same time not plant an Indian church. And you're a minority leader doing that. So how do you do that? It's so new that it was often met with suspicion. What is this? Is this really a church?
Folks who came to the church, their parents said that they can't come here any longer. But they weren't like 15 or 18, they were like 37. A really unique challenge of how do we gain the trust of the people that we're trying to reach, especially when this looks so different than anything they've ever seen before.
But in that discomfort, we've actually found that made the gospel central. Every other preference will have to give way and we'll all be a little bit uncomfortable together, but we'll rally around Jesus. And that's been our experience for 10 years now. You come into a room that's initially 95% Indian American. And so if you're a non-Indian that comes into that room, that's quite overwhelming. But then I had honest conversations that was, I'm used to being a minority, you're not used to that, and now you come here and you're the minority. So what is that like for you? And I think acknowledging that gave a lot of open, honest conversations. So now the church is 50-50. That wasn't our doing either, that was the Lord just bringing together the right people.
Especially in a place like Philadelphia where community isn't natural, what would compel people that are so different like that to come together and to share life with each other besides the gospel?
We were planted out of an Acts 29 church. There is no 7 Mile Road, Philadelphia without that Acts 29 church in Boston. You come into a brand new city, you don't know anyone, and it was other Acts 29 churches and brothers that were so vital to us.
They were rooting for each other, and they were rooting for us. They were there for us.
We've loved that, and we wanted to see that same kind of thing reproduced over and over again. I used to keep saying, we're a baby church plant. At some point, a 10-year-old is an awkward baby. So I had to realize, okay, we're growing up.
God, by His grace and His kindness towards us, is doing something great here. How do we participate in seeing more of this happen across the country in a way that we can uniquely speak to?
About 5 years ago, a group of church planters from around the country, who all happen to be South Asian, started together the Advance Initiative. We exist to see a movement of gospel-centered, multi-ethnic churches planted by or among Indian Americans.
When you grow up as an Indian American, you almost feel like you need permission to do things. When I heard that Ajay planted, I was thinking like, oh, you can do that? I started to really think about church planting. God put that on my heart.
Through what we were doing with the Advance Initiative, we launched a residency to see this same thing happen again.
I didn't even know that I should be doing a residency, and the Lord kind of just brought these two worlds together. I had no plan, but God always had a plan.
And so now he's in our first of 2 years, and we're hoping in 2 years' time to be able to send him out to plant.
One of the genuine desires of our heart is that when our children are engaging in church planting, that skepticism isn't there any longer.
We have one life on this earth, and why not risk it? Live it all for Jesus.
Endure long enough to be spiritual fathers and mothers to those who are coming up behind us so that they might exceed us in every way.